Great. So, hey everybody, thanks so much. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on our BIA website for viewing after. You've all been muted, I think for the most part. Please keep your mics off during the meeting to avoid any technical difficulties. I've just got to add in a couple more people. We welcome additional questions as the meeting goes on. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat box. Our team will be monitoring things and we will read them out during each new portion of the meeting. Please keep in mind that the chat box is for questions only and should be not used for discussion or airing of grievances. Disruptive comments will be moved offline. If you need to leave and come back, please use the same credentials as your original login details to get back into the meeting. There'll be time at the end of the presentations to open the floor to new business. At that time, please indicate in the Zoom chat that you have something to bring up and our team will call on you to unmute and share. So I think that's everything, so thank you. And over to you, Chair Fox.
Thanks, Tracy. Welcome to our 47th annual Uptown Waterloo BIA AGM. So this is a first for us, but it's kind of nice that it's going to be recorded and then some people will be able to chime in later. With the 5 o'clock start, it's for some people it's a little difficult to get out. I'd like to note, after I think I've been on the board for 10 years, this is kind of the first year we don't have a discussion around construction or a construction update. So that's always lovely to not have to deal with, but this year we also have a pandemic, so who would have thought? With this evening, we have some officials with us that I'd like to recognize. And first off, with the Region Waterloo, Councillor Jim Erb, and obviously, Jim, you're representing Urban Good as well. He's sitting in for Chair Redmond. And our illustrious Mayor Dave, who was on CP24 yesterday. Thanks for doing some good advocacy for our Uptown. Councillor Tennille, Councillor Sandra, Councillor Jen, thank you guys for coming. And also our CAO, I didn't see if Tim was on the call, but Tim has always been a strong supporter of our Uptown core and we see him out and about all the time as well. So thank you everyone for coming. As the chair of the board, I've seen firsthand how our staff truly has pivoted, and Tracy, our executive director, has done such a wonderful job with building a team. And I'd like to recognize Natalie as one of the anchor staff members in our team. She's done an amazing job. Dawn and Tawny and everyone has stepped up and gone above and beyond what was in their job description. And I know with going through the pandemic in the last year and all the closures and trying to come up with new marketing ideas, everybody has done their part. And I think with going forward, Tracy has looked at redoing the job descriptions and really taking a look at what the new roles will be going forward. And unfortunately, Tawny's going to be leaving us. It's unfortunate for us. Good for Tawny because she's starting her own business, but I know Tracy will have another person that will be a good asset to the team as well. So tonight, the agenda's on your screen. I think right now, if we could get a motion to approve the agenda, that would be great, as seen on the screen there. And our motion is made by Melissa. And Lawrence is going to second it. And any further discussions or anything people want to add to that agenda, just put it in the chat box. Tracy will be monitoring that. So all in favor? And carried. Motion for the minutes. In the package on the website, there was last year's AGM minutes, and hopefully everyone had a moment to review those. I know 2019 seems like a long time ago, but if I could get a motion to approve those 2019 AGM minutes that we did at the Delta on February 19th. I think Janet was going to do that.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. And seconder.
I'll second that, Rami.
Thank you. Nice to hear your voices, guys. Any discussion? All in favor? I think we're good. And that's carried. The audited financial statements, which was also in the package. If I can get a motion to approve those audited financial statements, they're for 2019. It's just, we can't give you 2020 because we're right in the midst of going through the audit process. And this is the time of year we always have our AGM. So it's kind of delayed. But if I can get a motion to approve those audited statements.
I move to approve the 2019 auditor's report as presented.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Okay, Andrea Harding, second that motion.
Great. Is there any further discussion on the report? If there's ever any questions, Tracy has done a really great job of getting so familiar with the financials when she took over. So she's very well versed after the last few years, and we're an open book, so please feel free to ask us. So is everyone all in favor? I think so, and that's carried. And the last thing on my list of to-dos is the conflict of interest declarations. Does anyone have a conflict of interest? And Lawrence is usually our resident lawyer, guru lawyer that will chime in on this, but I think we're clear of those conflict of interest.
So just
Okay.
one last motion, the omnibus motion.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
And may I have a motion to ratify the past actions of the Board of Directors for the year ending December 31st, 2020.
I, Dana Short, move to ratify the past actions of the BIA board for the year ending December 31st, 2020.
Great. And a seconder? I think Kristen.
I'll second that. Yeah.
Okay, great. All in favor? Yep. Okay. Perfect. So, as the board chair, I would like to take a moment to introduce the board of directors before I do the update. Do we have that list? Great, thank you. We have a great showing tonight on the agenda. As you know, I'm the chair. Melissa Durrell she's our vice chair, and there's about 5 of us that have been on the board for quite some time, and it's nice to have our new core group coming, very familiar and always stepping up. Gabby from SCORE, she has done a lot with volunteering and always up for a new challenge. Nick, you've again always stepped up to help us out. Thank you, Councillor Tennille, Ryan, Lawrence, our resident lawyer, Kristen, Andrea, Kathy King, Rami, another Kristen from the city. You've always given us great reports to Kristen and being our liaison. Dana, Kirk, Janet from Sun Life. She's one of our newer members, and thanks. And Mark Woynillowicz. So those are our board of directors. We're really pleased to have a full board. This will be my last term, so we'll have a few people that'll be stepping down in the next 2 years, and always looking to have new board members and new ideas, and it's nice to have some of the experience and know what we've gone through in the past, but it's also nice to have some fresh faces as well. And I'd like to say too, with our strat plan that we did 2 years ago, we've really worked towards becoming a governance board instead of an operating board. And Tracy has really spearheaded that. And I think we're doing a pretty good job on that aspect of it, and really entrusting Tracy and her staff to manage the day-to-day operations and move us forward. So with that, I would like to go into my strategic update, and again, going through our strat plan. And it's funny that we're already through 2 years of that that strat plan, because it was quite a process when we put that in place, and so many things have changed. Our biggest concern at that point was kind of getting through the LRT construction, the construction north of Herb, and then now how we can grow as a Uptown community during this pandemic. So in the last year, we have lost a few businesses, but we've also had quite a few businesses that have weathered the storm. They've been able to pivot, and with some of our other anchor tenants like Shopify, they've been able to help some of our businesses grow and become more online. And I think that's only going to make us better in the long run, for sure. The BIA also adapted while still focused on our strat plan, which is building a bold brand, strong leadership, growth of the core, and advocating with a clear voice. And as you can see, Tracy had her backdrop as our new Uptown logo. And it's we haven't had a new logo in a long time, so it's really nice to put a new face to our logo, or to our name on that front. We also, with the advocating, I have to say too, with the city of Waterloo, when we go to our conferences, it's funny to hear some of the other Uptown BIA, the other BIAs, and how they don't have the same kind of relationship we do at the city. And I know Tracy has really worked hard with building those relationships within the city, and when you have a grievance as an Uptown business, she has a good core group of people that she can go to and advocate on your behalf. So I think our advocacy has really stepped up, especially in this last year. We worked really hard at keeping our members informed. And I know the government changes with how they were managing our lockdowns, just with the general rules and regulations. Our team really took on, working with the city, also working with the rules and the government, the applications. Like, as a business owner, how many people had time to actually read through and figure out how to navigate the CRA website, how to go through those application forms? And I know Don really stepped up and took a lead role, but we were meeting like twice a month, trying to figure out how to best navigate the pandemic and the business closures and being in lockdown for 3 months. And keeping that communication rolling and being able to share it was, I think, key to get us through that time. We took a detailed review of our policies and updated them accordingly. And there was a lot of governance changes that we needed to make, also with employment policies. And I think we're really strong in our governance right now going forward. So, with transitions, even with within the staff, transitions are going to go much more smoothly. In April, we reviewed our budget and made changes so we could create a new funding stream for our membership. And I think that's where our Come Back Up fund came into play. And, you know, selling toques, selling bags, trying to create a budget so that we could help businesses. And I know a lot of businesses were able to take advantage of that and move some of their operations to outside. And being able to maneuver that budget, Tracy had done a great job. And I'd also like to say a thanks to the city for stepping up as well in that point, with helping us out in creating that $100,000 for next year. And I know Tracy will look at telling you more about that in detail. Took a real strong stance in the media. Tracy's always going on the CTV news. She's on the radio, trying to advocate for the businesses and trying to relay what the struggles really are in the Uptown core. But as well as trying to bring people into the core through Instagram and Facebook. And Natalie has really helped us out in that area as well. Our board continues to provide strong leadership and guidance. We did meet bi-weekly at the beginning of the pandemic so we could stay abreast of issues arising from our businesses. We hosted a town hall meeting to connect our membership with elected officials and community leaders. Moving forward, we will examine how our Uptown has changed because of the pandemic, and we will actively contribute to its evolution. And I think, you know, just with trying to, again, bring people outside and make it comfortable, and being able to utilize some of our great spaces like Willis Way, I know the team is going to be a very strong advocate going forward with the city and see how great we can be this summer. So that's the end of my report. I think, Tracy, it's over to you.
Thanks, Nancy. Sorry, I dropped a paper on the very feather light button and it moved everything forward and I couldn't figure out how to get it back. I'm so sorry about that.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I'm going to provide a bit of an overview for 2020 on some of the things that our team did to help support businesses. So at first, I just, to say that 2020 was a challenging year for our Uptown family was totally an understatement for sure. COVID-19 has had a devastating effect on many of our Main Street businesses, from which some won't return. But if we know one thing, we know that Uptown is resilient. We saw this adaptability during the 5 years of LRT and streetscape construction before the pandemic. Businesses evolved to serve and engage their customers in new ways. The same could be said for this past year. Our Uptown businesses are navigating a winding path out of this COVID-19 maze, and the BIA has been with them every step of the way, providing, like Nancy had mentioned, advice, coaching, funding, advocacy, and importantly, an ear to listen. Over the past year, we welcomed 20 new businesses to our fold, and we still have more on the way. For these reasons and more, we should celebrate. But we also need to remember that for various different reasons, and some of them were COVID related, we lost 24 businesses, and most, if not all that are left, are in some state of flux and uncertainty. Events looked very different for 2020. While we weren't able to host our flagship festivals, we were able to introduce a summer and fall open air market, kick off a new art walk on Hughes Lane that Nancy mentioned, and initiate several innovative media and advertising campaigns and efforts to bring people to Uptown in a safe manner. Some of the stats from those things are here on this slide, our infographic, which, by the way, in the package for the meeting today is our 2020 annual report, hot off the presses, if you can say that, not that we printed it, but we will also be sharing that on our website and social media, but you guys are the first people to see it. So if we move to talking a little bit about the advocacy work that we did over the year, we took on, as Nancy mentioned, a much larger advocacy role this year. We wrote letters, emails, and we met with many government and elected officials to share how the pandemic had affected our uptown business and is affecting our uptown businesses. As Nancy mentioned earlier, we adapted our budget to create the new Come Back Up Fund, providing almost $130,000 in financial assistance to over 70 businesses. We increased our communications to the membership, highlighting important information coming from the government and other related resources and opportunities. We definitely ramped that up in the earlier days of the pandemic, and just since the beginning of this year, we've kind of scaled it back to once a week, but still putting new information on our website daily. But we got a lot of positive feedback about those communications that people were getting from us, because they were finding that they were really helpful as information changed a lot, as everybody knows. We sat on many advocacy committees, including 2 under the Business and Economic Support Team Waterloo Region, or AKA the BEST WR, and the Advocacy Committee for the Ontario BIA Association. We hosted many new social media and advertising campaigns, showcasing uptown businesses and safe ways to visit. And we also created an innovative video series depicting businesses' response to restrictions and reopening through the pandemic. Importantly, we connected individually with you, our businesses, to provide advice, connections, and support. By the way, I just want to call out that all the photos in here were done by our own Dawn Taylor Gilders, and they're just beautiful. We continued regular walkabouts, and we have some of those folks on the call today as part of our partnership with the police and the Working Center, checking in with marginalized folks in our community, and also with businesses and owners and security personnel about any safety concerns they have. At the beginning of the pandemic, during our first lockdown, our BIA team even were walking weekly with our dogs, I might add, through the streets and alleyways, just to have a second set of eyes for businesses to help keep abreast of any vandalism that might be happening. The proactive Uptown Graffiti program continued this year and was successful with almost 1,147 tags removed throughout the year. Moving forward, with the days getting longer, many of you are probably thinking about patios. Recommendations are going to council on Monday to keep the extensions and waive the fees. So we'll provide an update as soon as we hear about that next week. We also kicked off our annual membership survey today. It was in today's newsletter, and we're asking everybody to participate. So please take the time to do that. We're eager, our board and our staff are eager to get your thoughts and ideas on how we can work better for you. So keep watching for that information in our newsletters. So we're here to work with you to rebuild our uptown while staying true to what's important: thriving businesses and economy, healthy lifestyle options, beautiful and useful outdoor spaces, innovative learning opportunities, caring neighborhoods, impactful arts and culture engagement, and sustainable development. So please know that we are here at any time to help you, provide advice, just an ear to listen to you. So please don't forget that. And just finally, I would be remiss if I didn't. I know Nancy has thanked us a lot, but I want to thank the team too. Natalie and Dawn and Tawny, they've been great to work with this past year. It's been interesting times working remotely, and they all stepped up to the challenge, and I'm really proud of the work that they've done and that we've been able to accomplish together. And Nancy mentioned that Tawny is leaving our team. She's officially done as full-time. She is helping us out in the transition with a couple hours a week as we start to look for somebody new. So please keep that in mind. That job description is on our website, and we'll be sharing that. And if you know of anybody that might be interested in our office coordinator position that also manages our programs, please let me know. And I think with that, that's over to you now, Nancy, to talk about the boundary and the levee.
All right, well, this used to be Jeff Zavitz's passion, so we're kind of sorry to see that he's not here to continue to discuss it.
I'm sure he's
however, I'm pleased to say there's no changes. But I'm also pleased to say that there is not going to be an increase in levies again for 2021. Also, the MPAC is using 2020 values for 2021 unless a property has undergone a renovation or improvement of some kind. So I know there was, I think in 2019, Tracy, that we had a few increases in those valuations, which increase the levy, but there should not be those issues for this year. So that's the big levy update.
Thanks. So I'll move into talking about the budget. So you see the budget up on your screen. So just to give you an overview of what we looked at for 2021, it's another balanced budget. Overall, you're going to notice that our revenue is quite a bit higher, and that's due to a generous $100,000 grant from the City of Waterloo to help us offset operating costs so that we could replenish our Comeback Up fund in 2021. Expenses are higher due to the same reason, shifting dollars to the Comeback Up fund. Payroll is a bit higher than last year's, benefits have increased, and there was a small cost of living provided for staff. Marketing and advertising is higher as the Comeback Up fund falls under that section. Under beautification, we now account for the full graffiti program costs and managing the Uptown LED lights. Plus, we budgeted for some additional placemaking activations this year that would be outside. So again, bringing people to the core in a safe manner. We cut budgeting for operational and capital reserves this year so that we could focus on the Comeback Up fund. And as Nancy mentioned earlier, and I know Brendan, I saw him on the call, our auditor, we've just started our 2020 audit. So those statements, once they're finalized and approved, will, as every other year, we will put those on our website with full transparency. So those are my comments about the budget.
Is there any questions on the budget?
Actually, if Natalie, I can't see the comments, so if you could just speak up, that would be great, because I've got all my screens are all really big right now.
I'm watching them, Tracy.
Oh, sorry, Dawn.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything.
No, and there's nothing. It's all good.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that being said, Tracy, should we be moving forward on the government subsidies and programs with Mark from KPMG?
That's right. So let me just make sure that I can close these things. My apologies. I can't figure out why. Here it is. I'm going to stop my share right now so that Mark can share his screen.
We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so that's good. One thing we should mention is our pub crawl. The food pub crawl.
Oh,
The food crawl. Sorry, I've got pub on the brain right now.
The comfort food crawl, which Mayor Jaworski is one of our judges. I know. I don't know, Mayor, if you want to chat a little bit about some of the food you tried out there for us.
I'm saving it up, Tracy, saving it up. Now that we have better times, I can actually go sit down maybe.
Good. Well, you have till the 21st. So everybody has a few more days to get in there and then get their votes in on our website for their favorite food. And then we're doing some draws where people can win some Uptown dollar prizes. First prize is $100, second is $50, and third is $25. So get your votes in.
Awesome.
So
Tracy, I'm just trying to figure out how to actually share my screen here, but I can go without some slides if need be.
Okay. You're good to go. I enabled the sharing.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Let me see if I can figure this out. Not a big user of Zoom, so I'm just maybe could you give me a bit of a walkthrough how to share my screen here?
So on the bottom of the screen, do you see the green share screen icon?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you click on that and then it's going to show you whatever windows you have open on your computer, and you click on the one which is the presentation that you want to show everybody.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So first off, thank you to everybody for allowing me the chance to come and chat about the the various government support that has been issued over the last year. Look forward to the next 15-20 minutes going through some of these items with you. So just by way of brief introduction, my name is Mark Woynillowicz. There will be a spelling test at the end of today, so here's your little cheat sheet. As mentioned, I am a senior manager in our enterprise tax practice here in KPMG in Uptown Waterloo. Enterprise is a great way of saying my focus is almost exclusively on small business and owner-managed businesses. Over the last year, I've been quite heavily involved in the wage subsidies that were issued as part of the Income Tax Act, as well as the recent changes a couple months ago to the rent subsidy, as well as the emergency business accounts that were issued. So we will be going through just a quick rundown as to what these programs entail, how we define revenue and a revenue reduction as part of the rules, and then we'll also get a chance at the end to go through some questions as well. So what I want to do is basically start off with what has been kind of the bread and butter and what has gotten a lot of the press release in the last year or so, which is the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. I'll probably use the acronym the SEWS or the SWEES interchangeably. So when I mention that, that's what we'll be going through. So really at high level, what does the wage subsidy entail? What does the SWEES entail? So really it's a reimbursement of wages in accordance with your decrease in qualifying revenues. So to put it in, to throw some numbers in here, really what does it entail? And it means that if you have, say, a 10% decrease in your revenues year over year, or compared to the first 2 months of 2020, we can ultimately apply to get a portion of those wages back. That recoverable portion of your wages can go as high as 12% if you have a 10% revenue reduction. It can also go down to 8%. And then there's also the element of a top-up program. So if you are one of the businesses that has really been devastated by the pandemic, there is the ability to claim additional subsidy over and above what your normal qualifying revenue decrease would be. So the wages that were eligible for this program started off on March 15th, which is kind of the circle date, so to speak, when the pandemic really started to take hold in Canada as to when these rules started to come into play. They were initially around for about 3 months. They were going to take us until June. They were subsequently extended into the fall, and now we have the rules being extended until June of 2021. So when we are taking advantage of these rules, obviously part of the rules that come along with them are the special reporting that comes along with the wage subsidies. So when we're looking at things such as T4 reporting for the year, there are certain boxes that are now required to be disclosed as part of your T4 summaries to make sure everything is reported. You're going to see boxes 57 to 60 are coming into play now, where if you've claimed wages for the wage subsidy in respect of periods that range from March to October, you're going to have to use these boxes accordingly just to report what amounts received. And the question I get asked all the time is, are the wage subsidies taxable? Do I have to include them on my tax return? And the short answer to that is yes. They are a taxable subsidy that comes from the government. Now, there is a special deeming rule that applies here under 125.7 sub 3 of the Act. And what this deeming rule essentially goes on and says that most of the time for government subsidies, the amounts are taxable when they are actually received, when the money hits the bank account. So say, for example, I didn't claim any, say I applied for a government grant in 2020, and I ultimately received the income in 2021. Under 95% of grants, that's when the amount would be taxable on your returns is 2021. The wage subsidies and the rent subsidy have a special rule that comes along with them that says that they are deemed to be received at the end of the qualifying period to which they relate. So if I have wages that were accrued in 2020, even though my subsidy may not be received until 2021, I would still have to include them on my 2020 income tax return. So keeping everything high level here, and I'm sure everybody is enjoying going through tax legislation at 20 to 6 on a Wednesday evening. I thought that I would keep this fairly high level. And so what I thought is, let's talk about first about who can claim the wage subsidies and who's available to claim them. So a qualifying entity needs to meet 4 conditions in order to make an application for the wage subsidies. And those 4 are really are outlined on your screen here. So first one is obviously you have to apply for them, and they are due the later of January 31st, 2021, or 180 days after the end of the qualifying period in question. So if you haven't gotten your claims in for March, April, May, or June, or part of July, then there would be a restriction on being able to get in the claims now. Going forward, we're within 180-day window of these qualifying periods, so we're able to make claims going forward for the wage subsidies. The individual with primary responsibility has to attest as to the completeness and accuracy of the claim. So somebody has to come through and say on the application that, yep, everything's accounted for, everything's accurate, in order to make a valid claim. There needs to be a corresponding revenue reduction, and you need to have a payroll account. So nowhere in this definition does it say that your corresponding revenue reduction has to be directly associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Nowhere in there does it say it. So if you do have a revenue reduction, let it be directly or indirectly related to the pandemic, there is still the ability to make a claim under this legislation. So the what is eligible for the wage subsidies? And there's 2 very important definitions that come into play here. One of them is eligible remuneration, and one of them is baseline remuneration. So what's the difference between the 2? The difference is that eligible remuneration amounts to amounts that were paid or payable in respect of a qualifying period. And that is the key word there that I've highlighted is paid or payable. They just necessarily need to be payable to the employee in the week in question to get the wage. Then there's the definition of baseline remuneration, and you'll see here that reference to paid or payable shortens to just the word paid. It doesn't include amounts paid or payable, it's only for amounts paid. Now, the reason for the legislation to be written in such a manner is, say that you were looking to give increases or bonuses to people, and you said, well, this is, I've been meaning to compensate an employee higher than what they've been currently earning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to claim I'm going to increase their wages post March 15th. And with that increase that I'm going to get back from the government in the form of the subsidy, I'm just going to fund their wage increase in that manner. Government didn't want that to happen, so we now have a baseline remuneration that comes into play here. There is an opportunity under the rules that you can actually change your baseline remuneration one time to be comparing wages to January 1st to March 31st, 2019. So what I've done here, and this is important for both the wage subsidy and the rent subsidy, we've gone through actually what is revenue, because in order to make a claim under either subsidy, you need to have a decrease in your qualifying revenues. So at the end of the day, what is revenue? And what you're seeing in the green box here is directly from the legislation. This is directly from the Income Tax Act. It is the inflow, receivables, or other consideration arising in the course of ordinary activities of the eligible entity, either from sale of goods, services, or the use by others of resources of the eligible entity. So really, when it comes back to a practical aspect, what does that mean? And it means that we are trying to look into what the definition of revenue is for normal accounting practices. Okay, so really whatever we include for accounting practices is really there for the definition of revenue for purposes of these subsidies. We would normally follow accrual accounting. So normal accounting practices apply in accrual accounting when we were doing the statements or when we're doing any type of compilation for year-end purposes. Now, consequently of that, a good starting spot for calculating revenues for these subsidies is your primary financial statements adjusted for these accrual accounting. However, there is an opportunity under the Act that says that you are allowed to calculate your revenues in accordance with a cash basis. You can elect under a cash method under these rules. The only caveat that comes with this election is that you can elect in one time, or you have to elect on your first claim, and you have to keep it consistent from claim to claim. You cannot go back and say, well, in one period an accrual method works best, and then in the next application, I want to change that method. I either want to go from cash to accrual or accrual to cash. Once you're into a cash election, you are in for the entire wage claim. So areas of choice here. Again, that cash versus accrual method is very important to know for purposes of these rules. And there is another option where we can calculate our revenue decrease year over year, or we can compare it to an average of January and February 2020. Whichever method results in the best impact to our wage or our rent subsidies is where we would probably make such an election in order to maximize our claim. However, once selected, you have to be consistent going forward. There is the ability to change your prior reference period one time, and that is in July, but then going onwards, you still have to be consistent from claim to claim. So we'll keep on this topic here of what is revenue. So revenues from related businesses, gifts, and other amounts received in the normal course of activities, membership fees, these are all included if they are part of your ordinary course of business. However, it's also important to go through what is excluded from revenues. So amounts on account of capital, i.e. capital gains on the returns, extraordinary items, if somehow your business wins the lottery, that would not be, that would be an extraordinary item, or if you have a huge asset sale, or if you have something come up that's out of the ordinary. Non-arm's length revenue is excluded from these tests. So when I say non-arm's length revenue, really what I'm referring to there is revenue that's created within the same group of organizations. So if I have two companies and I control both of them, those companies would be called non-arm's length for purposes of the Tax Act. And then any overpayments or remittances, so cash I receive from these subsidies, would not be included as qualifying revenues. So that's a quick rundown of the wage subsidy. So basically the main takeaway here is use what elections are available to you to maximize the claims, and let's ensure that the reporting on the T4s is correct, as well as the reporting on income tax returns as well, just to show CRA that we've gotten the claims, we're paying tax on them accordingly, but then all of our ducks are in a row, we're staying within the lanes on these rules. So that's the main takeaway from the wage subsidies. Now let's go to the rent subsidy, or we'll call the SERS for this. And let's talk about what the rent subsidy here is. Now these rules were introduced in October, and again, they're funded via the Income Tax Act, and they are up for a reimbursement for a portion of leasing costs up to $75,000 per property or per qualifying period. If your lease agreement, though, is of a net lease, so within the agreement, you say that the tenant shall be responsible for insurance, utilities, property taxes, etc., we can ultimately include that in your claim. That same deeming rule that I talked about beforehand, which taxes the amount in the period in which the wage subsidy is designed for, applies to the rent subsidy as well as we discussed to the wage subsidies. So even though your cash may be received at a different point in time, your subsidies are taxed for the period for which they were designed for. And then rent from non-arm's length parties. So we may see situations with clients or other manners by which you are earning rent from another company which you control. So say a company owns a land and building and it rents to your operating businesses. That rent is not included for these rules. Instead, you may be limited to, say, your mortgage interest that you can recover in those situations. So again, we'll keep this simple. Who can claim them? And you'll see that the rules here, or the definition of what is a qualifying rentor for purposes of the rent subsidy, is almost identical to what you saw for the wage subsidy. They're very similar rules. Again, they have to be in on time, the application has to be made, someone has to attest the information, you have to show a revenue reduction, and you need to have a valid business number with CRA. Under the wage subsidy, that was a RP account or a payroll account. Here, you don't necessarily need to have the payroll account. So let's go through quickly the CERS and it being available after October. So the subsidy percentage, the amount that you can get back under this program, really relates on 3 variables. And these are defined terms in the Act called the subsidy percentage. So if your decrease in revenues of your qualifying revenues is in excess of 70%, you can get a max of 65% back of your rent, of your eligible rent expenses. If you are between 50 to 70% for qualifying revenues, you can fall between 40 and 65%. And if you are less than 50% decrease in revenues, then you can get 40% of your eligible rent expenses back. However, there is also what's called a top-up regime, and this regime also applies to the wage subsidy rules. The top-up is there to ensure that people who have been drastically affected by the pandemic, or even not even from the pandemic, if you've got just a substantial decrease in your revenues, that the rules are designed to help those businesses the most. What you're looking at here is the definition of a top-up percentage for the rent subsidies. If you meet each of these 8 tests, and these are all directly from the Income Tax Act, you can get a further 25% of your rent back and any related expenses to it that are outlined in your lease agreement, so much as you don't surpass the $75,000 number for which qualifying period you're making the claim. So restriction has been made in Canada. It's in respect of COVID. You're restricted based on your geographical boundaries. If you don't comply with those restrictions, you could face a penalty. You have to ensure you're not in violation. As a result of the orders, activities were required to cease, that you have a loss of at least 25% of revenues as compared to your prior period, and that the restrictions in place are for at least 1 week. This sounds a lot like what we just came out of with the stay-at-home orders. So this may be something to ensure that when you're making the claims, you make sure that we take a look into this so that we're maximizing the rent subsidies that are available. So to put a box around everything here for the rent subsidies, make sure that we look into things like top-up percentages, that we look into what really our qualifying revenue reduction was, so that way we can maximize that claim. The claim, again, is taxable, but as long as we follow reporting it on our returns properly, then we're staying within the guidelines of these rules. There is no requirement to report the rent subsidies on any other slips like T4s or T5s or anything along those lines. And the last bit that we're going to just quickly go through here is the business account or the CEBA. So this one here was in place, which got loans up to $40,000, of which $10,000 were forgivable for expenses that couldn't be avoided. So this would have included items such as your rents. This would have included potentially wages and payroll, of which $10,000 of this $40,000 loan was forgivable if you made your repayments on time, which was by the end of 2022. So this is where we're starting to see a bit of a difference between how accounting income works and how taxable income works. So if you've taken full advantage of this $40,000 loan on your balance sheet at the end of the year, you're going to see a $40,000 liability for amounts owing. Now, because you've got $40,000 on your liabilities on your balance sheet, you've had no impact on your income statement. You've basically increased your cash and you've increased your liabilities. However, for income tax purposes, that $10,000 forgivable amount is taxable in the year you've received it. So if you've received this $40,000 amount taxable, or you've received it in 2020, the $10,000 forgivable portion is also taxable in 2020, even though it may be forgiven in 2022. So that then means that in 2022, when you have the $10,000 portion forgiven, and now you include it as accounting income, you may not have to report it as income for your income tax return. So just a bit of a timing there in terms of when the amounts are actually taxed. But again, this is where we show how important it is to make sure we get the compliance correct and we make sure the returns are reported correctly. But anyways, that's a quick rundown as to the rules. We've talked about the wage subsidies, the rent subsidies, and the emergency business accounts. So if there are any questions at this time that that you'd like to go through, I'm more than happy to field some questions.
While we're maybe waiting for questions, I just wanted to mention that, Mark, that was really informative. I know it's not the most riveting stuff for everybody out there, but it's so important for businesses to know what they're eligible for. I did want to mention and thank you, Mark, too, because you have also in the past offered your expertise and experience for our businesses, and we've hooked you up to chat with a few of them, which you've done free of charge, and we really appreciate that. And you've offered, if anybody has any questions after that, just to let me know, and I can put you in touch with Mark as well. So I'm just gonna check the chat to see if anybody had any questions related to Mark's presentation. I don't think I see any. Dawn, do you see anything?
Nope, there's nothing there.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for the chance to talk to everybody here. And again, if there's any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to help where we can.
Thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate that for sure.
There actually was a question there, Tracy. It was if he could help with those submissions. I don't know if Mark left.
Nope, I'm still here, Nancy.
Yeah, if just asking if you can help with assisting it with those submissions.
Absolutely. We're more than happy to help with the submissions. Normally where we will come into play is helping with the calculations and the analytics to make such a claim, and looking as well for opportunities that may arise from them. Where we are not able to get involved is the actual filing with the government, because as you saw in one of the definitions, there needs to be an attestation that the information is correct, and being that we're a third-party accounting firm, we wouldn't be able to attest to that. But in terms of helping with the number crunching and seeing what opportunities are available, we would be more than happy to assist in that manner.
That's great. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for
I don't see any other questions there, Tracy.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Mark. And I think we're going to move on with our amazing Vice Chair, Melissa Durrell, who's always so positive. She's always running around with a big smile on her face. I don't know, Starbucks. Hey, did you get a new car?
I did.
Yeah, I saw that. You look hot.
Oh my goodness. What, I'm blushing now, for goodness sakes. Thanks, Nancy. So I was tasked with one of the jokes around the BIA Board of Directors table is sometimes when I say stuff, I'll say, so just to be Merry Sunshine here. And so they asked me to bring a little bit of Merry Sunshine to the AGM today. So I'm going to start. And maybe to begin with, I can say we all feel this way. We're going through a global, unique, shared experience. We're weeks away from hitting the 1-year marker of the global lockdown. And everyone is adapting in new ways of working. And it can often feel like there's a dark cloud hanging over everyone's head. So we're living in times that demand unity, compassion, and strength. So let's start with a certainty. Future historians will find the COVID-19 pandemic a subject of extraordinary interest. By the time they come to write about it, the pandemic itself will be over. That much is certain. The pandemic will end. Between now and then, there are few other certainties. Now, I'm sure you're all feeling the pandemic pivot, as Tracy mentioned earlier, moving your business online, launching at-home deliveries. This has not been easy. We've seen several companies soar, companies like Canadian Shield becoming a manufacturing juggernaut of PPE masks, Waterloo Brewing and Murphy's Law turning distilleries into hand sanitizer plants. As a communication strategist, I pull these statements out regularly with my clients. You have been probably living them. So numbers rise, lockdown again, changing of colors, red, gray, orange, whatever it is. As a business owner, we begin with the initial response. So let's check in. You get your leadership team together, and for some of you, it's just you. You're the entire leadership team. And you ask the question, like, how do we communicate with our clients and customers at this time? We need to let them know what's happening with our business. Now, the one thing that many people forget to do then is to stop and assess. Is it working? What's the impact? What's the resolution that we're hoping for? Are we hoping to move people online, moving them to a delivery model? We need to remind them where to find you. And here's a comms tip, the last line here. Evaluate and evolve. Learn from every lockdown. Learn from every single time we go into another color. Where are your customers? What do they need to know? Are you clearly communicating about where you are at? And then you remind them again. While we're all living in what can often be described as Groundhog Day, at least I feel that way, I wanted to help by putting a little inspiration into where we are going. Our Uptown has gone through considerable changes over the last decade, but it's the next decade that I want us all to be looking forward to. There are a couple things that urban centers need for our businesses to survive, and much of this is managed by the city. But today I'm going to focus on one thing, and that's people. People living and people working in Uptown. Now, for the city planners and politicians on the call, I know you eat and drink this for a living, so allow me a moment, because for many of us business owners in Uptown, we miss the details because we've got our heads down trying to run our companies. And so for the business owners on this call, I want you to get pumped up about what's coming. Now, as a provincially designated urban growth center, Uptown needs to plan for 200 people and jobs per hectare by 2031. So what does that mean? Well, Uptown's about 88 hectares, which is about 218 acres. It has approximately 10,000 people and jobs, and that's a bit of an older number, but work with me here. Planning for 200 people and jobs means that Uptown must aim to accommodate over 17,000 people and jobs by 2031. So beyond those raw numbers, planning must set Uptown on a path to grow as a community destination, a great place to live, work, play, learn, and innovate. So as that old saying goes, if you build it, they will come. And Uptown has some truly unique installations, art, and buildings that give it character. But what's coming up? Well, I've compiled a list of buildings that will add vibrancy, character, and most importantly, people to the Uptown core over the next several years. Now, I'm warning here, some of these buildings are still in the beginning stages, meaning they may change. They could be lower or they could be higher. There might be more apartments or less apartment condos. And I also chose the architectural renderings because they're usually prettier, and also because it'll give you a really good idea of where they're located within our Uptown. And again, I want to mention these buildings may change, but some will likely something is going to get built in that space. So it gives you an idea where growth is going to occur. So we're going to start at the south end. This is built circa 1877, 181 King Street. There's people that are living in there right now. That's 188 units, adding 333 new people living in Uptown. Now, beside it on the corner of Allen, obviously not built, this is going to be where the Adult Recreation Center was. And isn't this a beauty? So it's 185 King Street South. This speaks to the jobs portion in Uptown. It's a commercial building with 5 ground floor level retail units. And I know we're talking a lot about people working from home and this phenomenon that's occurring. And while I believe that we'll still see flexible schedules for workers, offices will survive and thrive. And I can speak from my industry alone, we're really struggling to be creative online. And all of my peers are counting down the days till we get everyone back into our agencies. I know tech developers, CEOs, tech companies that I work with, they are all looking forward to getting people back into the office spaces. We need that human contact. We need that hive. So just a little more south at King and John, the 2 towers, just near Sun Life. This is a proposed 370 units. That's 550 new residents to Uptown. And it gives you a pretty amazing perspective on what's happening in the south end of Uptown Waterloo. And if we do the math, just really back of a napkin right here, we're looking at about 1,000 new residents living and working in that block, which is fantastic for Vincenzo's and all the other amazing businesses in and around that space. Now, just north, this one's a pretty new one at King and George, which is across from Circa. It's YNCU. So they're going to remain on the ground level, but they'll build 8 floors. They're adding 34 units, likely adding another 100+ people living and working in our core. And if you notice, this mixed use design for buildings is a blessing in Uptown, where retail is located on the main floor and apartments and condos are above. It creates action on the street. And of course, we know the LRT, as you can see, it drives right past this southern part of our Uptown. Now you're looking at a proposed view from the intersection of Regina Street and William Street South. This is the future. I know a few business people that have been salivating over this property. I know one of them's on this call right now. And just to show you how long things can take, it was nearly 10 years ago that the region was talking about getting rid of this water pumping station. It doesn't work, but it still remains gated and no one can enjoy this space. One of the amazing documents that's been produced at the city is called the Uptown Public Realm Strategy. And someone finally had the guts to zhuzh up this space and show us what's really possible. So I hope this inspires you as something new that'll be coming down the pipes. I'm going to jaunt east for a moment to Herb Street. This is the old LCBO that's been sitting waiting to be developed for far too long, and it's a preliminary look of what could be coming. I'm sure I'm making a few planners a little nervous right now. You can see the Laurel Creek moving in just as it meets Herb there, across from Dana Short, shout out. It's proposed to have over 230 units, with this 400 people moving onto this block. And of course, we've seen this one, it's almost done. I can see it off my patio back here, just down the street. It's a smaller build and nearing completion. But to talk about the big picture here, our Uptown is expanding, like we're getting fatter, because, you know, we used to be just King Street, and, you know, we had a few little spots off this, you know, Marsland Center, a few things that were drawing people out. You know, we're really starting to see development along Herb Street East. It really takes pressure off King Street. And we're moving, you know, from some of those single detached homes to buildings with 6+ floors, allowing for more people. And this will allow our commercial area to expand, which is really exciting. Now, we can't forget the barrel yards. I look at those cranes and actually set up, because I wasn't sure if you could actually see the cranes from this view that I have today. I watched them from my HQ. When first approved, this was the largest brownfield development in Southern Ontario. There's nearly 1,000 units built at this time, and another 200 are on the way. And this will also house like close to 1,500 people. There's an office tower that's also coming at Herb and Father David. And it also houses the only 4-star hotel in our region. Now, ducking back down Regina Street, this condo project is approved with a hold on it. And I actually remember meeting the developer back when I was a city councillor, and he called this building his legacy building. It'll have 200 units, adding nearly 400 new residents into our core. And one of the unique things about this building is it's one of the first we're seeing with smaller retail spaces on the ground level. And that's a trend that we'll see with a lot of the mixed use developments that are coming forward, which makes our leases much more affordable for our retailers out there because the square footage is less. Behind Communitech, where hundreds of tech startups are working, this will be a gem at the corner of 35 King Street North. We often call this the historic post office. It'll primarily be office space as well, with ground floor retail. And it really fits the current character of that area. And I can already pick out the spot on that second floor patio where hopefully I'll be having a cocktail or two. Kitty corner from that and behind is an area that's starting to grow, that Princess Dorset. So this is one of the towers. It's got 54 units in it. Nearly 100 new Uptowners are going to live in this building. And it's really becoming part of a little cluster because it offers some retail on the main level, giving Dorset a new purpose. And I say a new purpose because right across the street is one of my favorite places for cocktails right now. And we actually had this awesome Waterloo staffer that I worked with years back. And she had a special place in her heart for Princess Street. And she used to often call it the Princess Promenade. She's moved away, but I always think about her as I see this corner starting to grow. And then the biggie, right? Strata. This is going to add nearly 600 people into Uptown at Bridgeport and King. I'll just do a little pandemic pun here, a shot in the arm for the future. It'll also house Lounge, which is making it a destination spot in Uptown for families and the community as a whole. So if you've been doing the math, nearly 10 new buildings on the way, adding thousands of new people into our Uptown to work and eat and shop and play. So we delight our new neighbors with cool art festivals like Lumen. And this is one of my favorite, Heavy Meta. I don't Heavy Meta, if anybody was there, made famous at the Burning Man Festival. It was actually in the Waterloo Library parking lot during the Lumen Festival. And for those of you who were at that dance party, you know what I'm talking about, so great. But Lumen is just one of 26 amazing events that are going to attract more than 200,000 people. And we know that using our public spaces like Waterloo Park is an important part of our culture. I have a special place in my heart for Waterloo Park. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. And not what it is today, but what I know it will be over the next decade. And this project's already begun. But I wanted to just point it out because what I love about this project was we knew that we needed shade and it would be an important part of creating spaces. And so the designers came up with this super brilliant concept that each area or room is made up of trees. So as you can see, we have the Sandy Willow Playroom, we have the Cherry Tree Community Room, the Redwood Room, the Birch Room, you get it. And it's also leading to creating a large space for us to hopefully be able to hold festivals and graduations all in the heart of our park. On the other side of Waterloo Park, which is currently under construction, the goal is to revitalize Silver Lake and reimagine the area around it. And like everything in Waterloo, it transforms with the times. They'll add some new pathways. There's going to be a gorgeous fountain as its focal point and a beach area. Yes, a beach area for the students to enjoy the sun. Well, all of us to enjoy the sun, but I imagine that'll be a popular hot spot. And also pedestrian bridges and a boardwalk. So when will we be let off our proverbial mask leashes? And the answer is vaccines, right? And there's really promising information coming in that regard. Just today, we heard from Minister Anand that the Pfizer vaccine is arriving today and tomorrow. That's nearly 500,000 doses delivered weekly. We're going to add another 1.3 million of Moderna to that list in March. So what's that going to look like for Uptown? I'm going to try to break it down super simple. So we are in phase 1 right now, which is focused on essential healthcare workers and residents of long-term care. And that should be complete in March. So we're super close to getting phase 1 done. Then we move to phase 2, which is scheduled to run from like March, April to July. And that's when essential workers, other essential workers, people over the age of 60, that 60 group, they'll start with people 80, go down to 70, go down to 60. And if we look at the positive results coming from the UK, and I'll explain more about that in a second, we'll see a significant drop in numbers over the next 2 months. And then we get to phase 3, which is general population, and that starts in August and continues on. Now, all of those dates are actually based on shipments. So if we receive more faster, which is what I'm hearing, these timelines could be updated, which is really exciting. Now I mentioned the UK, and I'm just going to put on my old reporter hat for a second and tell you about the latest. The UK has been keeping a close eye on those that have received the vaccine. And what they're seeing is that the vaccine is shown to reduce transmission of the virus. So the UK has vaccinated more than 10 million people so far. The results of that study, which have not formally been published, but suggest that the vaccine may have a substantial effect on transmission of the virus. It means the jab could have a greater impact on the pandemic, as each person who's vaccinated will indirectly protect other people too. It's like over 70%. So as the British say, every jab gets us one step closer to getting out of the pandemic. So vaccines are on the way, optimistically, general pop in the summer. And we're adding 6,000 plus new residents in Uptown, another 370,000 square feet of office, new and proposed developments that could generate another 2,000 plus jobs in Uptown. And a quote that's hot off the press, which is Uptown is projected to have twice as many residents living here in 2040. And that'll come exclusively, almost exclusively, through new mixed use and residential developments. So it's exciting. We're building it and they're showing up. And finally, we did a report called the Uptown Vitality Report. When I say we, I mean the BIA and the city did it. I had nothing to do with it. But they asked current and potential new Uptowners what they wanted to see in the core. So as many of you are looking at your businesses and perhaps even looking at some new opportunities in Uptown, now's the time. Retail is everything. It's the major thing that was mentioned. We are seeing that people are missing retail, and they're missing the retail experience. And that's not to say that having an online presence now and into the future isn't a good investment. Both are going to be required for businesses now and into the future. But retail clothing for men and women, young, hip, that one's for you, Al, and older people is what people are looking for. Coming in as a second request is home decor and kitchenware. So consider new buildings. These people are going to have to put new things in those homes. So something like that is a great idea. And third and fourth were one-stop shops and variety stores. Now, to note, which is really nice for all of us independent run businesses, that was one of the major comments that people made. They like the independent store. So, you know, I like to say in Uptown, we're more hustle flow than Soul Cycle. We're more Wordsworth than Chapters. You get it. So no one can say how long this acute phase of this pandemic will last. But what's virtually certain is that the impact on the extent of human sociability will prove to be temporary. 5 or 10 years from now, there will be about as many mass gatherings as there were before the coronavirus, because we're people, we're human. So I'm asking all of you to say hello to the Roaring 20s together, because Uptown's ready, and we just got a couple more months to make it through. Thanks, Tracy.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. And so, yeah, such positivity, and yeah, it's great to have the reminder that all of these new buildings are coming, which bring with them new people, new shoppers, everything else. So thank you so much for that reminder. That's awesome. Sorry, I'll turn it back over to you, Nancy. I was
Oh, no, that was excellent. I always loved hearing the growth of opportunities, and I want positive days ahead like everybody else. So it's thank you, Melissa, for that. Was there any questions before we move on to new business? I know Tracy was hoping that everyone would put, if they had items they wanted to bring up, they would put it in the chat box. But I don't see any items. Anything else from the board that they might want to bring up for new business? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so with that being said, wow, this is really, one thing with the virtual 6:16. Now everybody can go enjoy a glass of wine. I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
I, Nick Benninger, can motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you so much, Nick. And that ends this evening's events. Thanks everyone for taking part. And again, all those documents are online, and you can have access to it. And if you want to look at it in further detail, you're more than welcome to. So
Hey,
thank
Nick,
you, everyone.
who's making my beer tacos if not you? I just,
You look like you're well fed. You'll survive.
Ouch.
Burn. Good to see everyone.
Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks
Night, everybody.
for joining us tonight, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.